It is Monday, July 21st, 2025. I won't make too much of a comment about how quickly summer races by. But anyway, I'll call the meeting to order, and we will start with Miranda and go around the room and introduce everyone. I don't think we have any guests tonight, so
Miranda Ahmed, Assistant City Manager.
Hello, good evening, Eric Nilsson, City Attorney.
Mike Monk, City Manager.
Patsy Foster Bolton, Ward 1.
Kimberly Wilburn, at large.
Rebecca Shack, Ward 2.
Brad Worsom, Mayor.
Kizzy Coakley, Ward 4.
Paula Rameli, Ward 3.
Deb Calvert, at large, seat A.
Julie Wishon, Community Development Director.
Alicia Gray, Economic Development and Housing Manager. Kendall Larson, Housing Coordinator.
Jason Tate, Deputy Chief of Police.
Excellent. Well, welcome, everyone.
I was
Good.
going to say instead of speak to the
Good.
hand.
We didn't catch that on video, so that's probably good. Anyway, so welcome, and tonight it's all about housing, which is an important topic for all of us. And Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brad. Council, good evening. Really, my part tonight is pretty brief. I'm going to hand it over to Julie, as for all of you now, been on council. Not new to you is July, all things housing as we call it. So Julie and her team, both Alicia and Kendall, will be presenting tonight. So the three of them will be presenting a number of topics that were put in your packet. Staff looks forward to just visiting with you on a couple important topics. Also want to just acknowledge appreciation for you taking some time to fill out the encampment survey, because that was helpful in drafting what you saw in your packet, and certainly we'll get into that here a little bit later. And then looking at just some of those housing things that we've been talking about this last year, and staff providing some updates regarding some of the activity this last year. And so again, look forward to that conversation. And also we have Deputy Chief Tate with us this evening as we get into the encampment policy. So if we have questions on enforcement, certainly Jason will provide us some insight and perspectives on enforcement, because that's part of the conversation with the policy. And then I'll just kick it over to Julie. We did put up, as you saw, Mentimeter, really looking to guide conversation tonight, so I probably stole Julie's thunder on that one. So thanks for setting that up, Julie. Really was make sure we maximize our time this evening and really focus on items, or the items in your packet that are most important to you. If all things were considered equal, I think we were planning, Julie, 17 minutes a topic or so to get through this evening, but we'll, as staff, readjust a little bit based on how you answered it, because again, we want to make sure we focus time where you want to spend time this evening. So with that, really appreciate Julie and her team putting together the staff report, even for myself reviewing it before we pushed it out. Just some really good stuff in there, as always, just as our city. We spend this July every year in the study session, because housing is so important, and whether it's our availability of housing, our housing stock, along with how we look at affordability, all of our programs. And I know we cover much of this through our EIP that we had in a conversation here a couple months ago, but tonight's just a deeper dive into that. And again, I really appreciate our city. I think it's real, actually I appreciate our city mainly because just of what we do on the housing front. We are leaders in the housing arena. I'd say even last week, Mayor Wiersum and myself and Ms. Wishnack spoke with two of our legislators on housing. So housing is just really important, and certainly on a legislative front, it's going to be back in front of legislators, and certainly all the activity that we're doing is important. And our legislators recognize the good work that we do. And so none of that doesn't happen by accident. We're intentional about it. So with that, I really want to turn it over to Julie, and we'll get things rolling.
Thank you, Mike. I think whenever we get together and we start talking, by the way, we started talking about this in January, what we were going to do for July's study session. And we do it that early so that we at least have subject matter and framework for what we're going to be presenting to the city council. And it's also kind of a reflection about not only things we've done in the past, but then how we're moving toward the future. And there are some ideas in here that are just being kind of vetted out. And I would say like legacy housing is one of those subjects where we've had it in the background for a while. We've been thinking about it, doing some research, that sort of thing. But now it's coming together. And we want to show you some of the products that we're thinking about as we move ahead. So the way I have it, and Alicia and Kendall can correct me if I'm wrong, we've got encampment probably as the number one vote getter, so we'll spend the most time talking about the encampment policy. Then the second area is manufactured housing. The third area was legacy. Program ownership would be next. And then I got lost after that. Okay. Rental registry. So that tells me that we've done enough education on rental registry. You guys know where we're kind of at, so people feel fairly comfortable about where that subject matter is. But maybe we'll talk about it for just a minute and just check in with you. So we'll do it in the order. We have 2 hours planned for this, so probably encampment. It's gonna take a while for us to explain it. We've talked to you about it before, but there's some really good research behind what was proposed. And then we'll let Deputy Chief Tate go because maybe that was his main issue of being here tonight, so.
We'll let him go.
He loves all housing because he heard about it all afternoon today, but he said it's okay if he can go after that. So was there any other subject matter? I see short-term rentals up here. Anybody else have other subject matters they wanted to cover that we didn't cover in the report or didn't identify? Okay. We'll just make sure we circle back to that.
Oh, I do have one, sorry.
Okay. You can just shout it out.
It's just the whole condo, like how do we get them built?
Condos and the state law
Condo
issue.
warranty law.
Warranty
Yep.
law. Okay.
Other states are dealing with that too, apparently.
I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Oh.
I didn't hear you though.
Oh, I was just saying, other states are dealing with that issue too, I heard in Columbus.
Okay. Got it. All right, we've got all of those written down. So let's take, if you don't mind, Mayor, we'll do 30 minutes on encampment, and then we'll move on from there. So I'm gonna hand this over to Kendall. She's been the research expert on this. All of us as a group, all four of us, including Eric, as the city attorney, we get together pretty regularly to talk about this encampment. So we feel like it's pretty well vetted at this point, but there's room for improvement always. So go for it, Kendall.
Alrighty. So starting off with just some kind of reflective information about our homelessness initiative, that in 2022, the city partnered with His House Foundation to provide emergency homeless assistance. And from 2022 to present day, we've assisted around 84 residents or 40 households. And that continues to increase. And with that, referrals coming from the police through our the kind of work group that we've had and the dashboard that we put together in 2023. There have been 18 households that have been referred directly to His House from those interactions. And then also there are referrals that His House gets through through Minnetonka schools. And then of those households, looking at 7 households have been referred from His House to shelter in a location that the person was looking to get shelter. And as part of that shelter, some of those, it says 4 households, theirs were referred to either mental health or substance use assistance as well. And then looking at coordinated entry, which is the county's system for getting on a list to get assistance and specifically get into housing. That 5 households were provided direct coordinated entry assistance. And that happened mostly through Martha who's the executive director at His House. That was the best thing for those in households at that time to get them on into coordinated entry. And so, yeah, just a little info there for the data that we have. As I said before, the staff formed an internal homelessness work group in 2023, which then developed an internal response model to go through some procedures and some scenarios of how we would help individuals with very specific cases, and then also creating an intake form and dashboard that our police and community development and also the community can use. In addition, the police department also issued a formal policy for homeless individuals and how the police interact with homeless. So if you have more questions on that, I'll give it over to Jason. But then in 2024, we also started researching more homelessness initiatives and looking far and wide across the nation, but also to some of the communities around us, and just researching other initiatives, procedures, and policies that were kind of best practices to be able to support our community. And through that research, we then went to thinking about what we would have for an encampment policy, and we brought that to the last study session in 2024. And today we will present the research that went even more in depth after you all stated that we should pursue this and look more into it. And so Minnetonka hasn't experienced encampments, like large encampments that we hear about, but we want to be proactive. We don't want to be reactive. And so we're looking to address homeless situations in the community. And so we do employ an outreach and resource approach through the policy that we have, the internal procedures that we follow. But the existing homelessness policy does not provide specific language to address camping or homeless encampments on public property specifically. Staff has seen more remnants of few camps here and there throughout the city as we've had our dashboard specifically, seeing those different interactions come through, finding tents that maybe have been abandoned or what have it. So there have been more sightings of those as time has gone on. And so as we began researching other cities pursuing these very similar problems and looking at various approaches to enforcing regulations on camping and homeless encampments on public property. They were all mostly centered around kind of anti-camping ordinances or policies. But in many cities, the ones specifically researched, that enforcement was not the primary method to addressing homelessness or encampments. The primary method was outreach first. And each city agreed that homelessness is not a crime and not wanting to criminalize homelessness. But, how do we balance that, right? And so through that research, then a lot of information, but these were a lot of the cities that we looked into, and you can see the top three are from around the country in different locations, varying sizes as well. And so specifically, I'll just do a few points from each, but with Wichita, Kansas, there was an ordinance that was passed that prohibited camping in or upon any public property or public right-of-way unless they were granted a permit to be there for an event or anything like that. Some of their enforcement includes 48-hour notice to vacate the property, and that they do have a violation would be a misdemeanor, and that there could be a fine and potential jail time if as part of their enforcement. But they did indicate as well that a person would not be cited with a violation if they were deemed to be homeless and they weren't able to find them temporary shelter housing anywhere else. San Diego, obviously a very large city compared to us, but they also have an ordinance which prohibits camps and encampments in or upon public property, but provides outreach to those who need it before enforcement begins. So that very much outreach approach first, and providing information and assistance and resources. Again, very similar enforcement for violations, but their their ordinance specifies very specific locations where the enforcement would occur, and some of those are 2 blocks from a shelter or 2 blocks from a K through 12 schools. I think city parks was another one. And so those are kind of the initial places that they want to make sure encampments aren't growing, and then anywhere else in the city after that, but those places are given priority. And then again, 24 hours after they've given notice, then that's when kind of abatement procedures happen and people are moved from that location. Boulder, Colorado has an ordinance as well that prohibits camping within any park, parkway, recreation area, open space, or any other city property. They did not have any language in this specific part of their ordinance that had a violation or enforcement aspect. So I couldn't find anything on that. So whether or not they do any type of enforcement, I do not know. And then looking locally, starting with Minneapolis, they have an ordinance that prohibits cars, tents, and other temporary structures to be built or to be placed or parked on any public street, public or private premises, or street in the city, and used specifically for shelter for living purposes. And so they use that ordinance to help with encampments. But they do have a homeless response team that works 24/7 and goes out to the encampments and does outreach and provides assistance to those living in encampments before any kind of enforcement would take place. Looking at St. Paul, they have a city policy. It's not an ordinance, but a city policy, as well as a police policy that they use. And their city policy establishes a standard procedure in which they would clear an encampment. And so they provide guidance to city governmental officials and staff in evaluating and closing encampments that are in those public spaces being used for temporary shelter. And they also have a homeless assistance response team that provides the resources and alternate housing options as well. So Minneapolis, St. Paul, very similar in that. Another is Rochester. They have an ordinance that prohibits camping in and upon city land or right-of-way. It's a misdemeanor as a violation, and there are specific situations for prosecution that are laid out within the ordinance. But they have a prioritization of spaces in the community. So they have it listed out kind of similar to San Diego's that, places closest to schools and in parks, and a few other are listed out in their ordinance. And the last one I'll mention here is Duluth. That also has an ordinance that prohibits camping or establishing a campsite on city property as it is a public health and safety risk. And so there are penalties that are included. A fine of no more than $200 is specified, and then there's also specific situations for prosecution for violations of that ordinance as well. So with all of that, we also sent out a survey to the council to get feedback in order to kind of pinpoint the topics that we thought were most important for what you all believe were the most important topics to include in this encampment policy. And so through that feedback, it indicated that the council wanted the policy to prioritize health and safety as number one, and not to criminalize homelessness, as well as to provide a longer time frame to give people time to receive the assistance and to make a plan. In reviewing the feedback, we had a few instances. I don't know, Julie, if you want to take over here.
I can talk about the private property instance. The response from you all was kind of similar to other responses, so we picked up, you wanted to follow the same procedure for a private property as you would any other property. There's a little bit of a challenge with that, in that, if there was a private encampment on private property and the owner did not want them there, they would be trespassing. And the police would go and remove them and trespass the people on the property. And that would be the case for anybody on someone else's property. But the way you answered it, it felt like you felt like it should be handled the same way as like public property. That's the impression I got. So I just want to be clear, when we're talking about the policy here, it does distinguish between private and public property. So private property would be treated as all private property would be treated. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, I just want to make that clear. Keep going. Sorry, notes.
Yes, so on the screen is actually within the policy itself as well, but an encampment scenario that kind of plays out exactly what Julie just specified, of how you have to determine who the property owner is, and then that would determine what kind of procedures would be followed.
Yeah.
Question on that, I mean, what if the property owner didn't have a problem with that occurring on their property?
It was just in the paper.
Yes,
I don't think we've answered that yet,
okay,
because I think.
yeah, I mean, I think,
You could see the struggle
Yeah.
that was happening there.
yeah,
I think we're not as advanced on dealing with that circumstance where it's
Mhm.
indicted in.
okay, very good.
However, I think you probably use the same general parameters. There are other ways of dealing with that, but
Mhm.
I don't know that we got that far in our scenario building.
No.
Okay, fair enough,
Yeah, good question, because there's been a lot of coverage
right.
this
Yeah.
March being about that case. Anything else you were gonna say about this?
No, unless, well, there is one more slide.
Yeah, go ahead.
Perfect. It's not meant for you to read. It is just an image of the policy itself. That this policy that was presented to you was drafted with feedback from the council and put together for you to review. And with that, then our question to you is, does the City Council have additional direction regarding the draft encampment policy? Any other feedback you would like to provide?
Yeah, and I think one of the questions that was tossed around today is, you know, a lot of the cities say they're not criminalizing encampment, folks that are in an encampment. I think that's a little bit misleading, because they all have, or almost all of them, except for one, had some kind of criminal penalties after trying to do the outreach. And that's kind of what you see in the policy here, is we follow this kind of outreach campaign, if you will. There's an allowance for that to occur. There's some outreach that is given if they don't take the outreach and people continue to stay. Then there's the implementation of these other regulations like anti-camping. What's the other? There's two other city ordinances.
Yeah, so it's the nuisance ordinance, public nuisance ordinance.
Public nuisance and one other one.
The
We have-
parks and the
And the
parks.
loitering.
Yeah, the
And
loitering.
loitering, yeah.
That's right.
So there are other ramifications after all that outreach is done. And by the way, in the policy, it also says that the city manager has to be informed, has to get the information, and then make that final call as to whether we move into that second phase, if you will. So that's how the policy is drafted today. We make changes before we come back to you, but we do want to, at some point, come back to the council for the full adoption. So, with that,
All right.
back to you.
Well, thank you very much. So council, thoughts, comments on the policy that was shared with us? Councilmember Coakley.
I guess
Kizzy.
I have a comment in regards to the policy. And I know that you're saying you're going to do outreach, contact the person, but sometimes folks have mental health. And so I just don't want us to be criminalizing people who have mental health, who may not accept the help because of their mental health. There's people who don't want to go stay in shelter for whatever reason, and more so it's mental health. And so I don't want us to start to perpetuate the problem of criminalizing folks who have mental health, because I can see if we don't add that where we say, okay, we've done some outreach, we've had the social worker, we've offered services, but they still won't accept the help. Well, if someone is not accepting help, then it could be something else going on with them. And so I just don't want us criminalizing those folks because, you know, I worked in shelter, stayed in shelter, and there's people just don't want to go stay in shelter. And it's usually tied to some mental health. And so I just don't want us doing that. And so I'm wondering, is there another way that you could include in the policy if someone is diagnosed with mental health, then you just don't penalize them, you don't criminalize them. I know in court that I remember working with a particular case where this woman had mental health. They didn't criminalize her. She kept committing domestic violence. And they didn't criminalize her. They kept sending her to mental health court, but she kept doing the same stuff, and they never criminalized her. So I feel like if we can do that for DV, we should be able to do that for homelessness and any other person who have mental health. We should be, if we can identify that they have mental health, there should be something that we say we're not going to criminalize those folks, because it doesn't make any sense to put people in jail who got mental health. That's just how I feel about it.
And I think policy, I mean, the policy says specifically that we don't criminalize homelessness, correct?
I think, and that's where, and all the policies say that.
Yeah.
But when you get down to it and you have, I'm gonna give you
Right.
a scenario and maybe this will help tease out what Kizzy was saying. You have a situation where maybe you have five folks camping on city property, let's say on the front lawn of City Hall, and constantly get complaints. People are scared to come to the city campus because they're
Yeah.
intimidated by whatever perceived criminal acts these people would do to them. And you're facing that, but then you've already done your outreach. People have been contacted. They won't take your help. They just want to camp out. So then what?
Right.
You do nothing, or you continue with some type of enforcement. And I think I hear what Kizzy's saying. It's hard to criminalize folks that have some challenges, mental health challenges. Police department well aware of that situation. You can see our outreach people have sent folks to diversion programs and assistance programs for mental health. So obviously that's being recognized in the field. But when you have that situation, I use an extreme.
Yeah, but no, I get it.
You see
Yep.
my point. You're just gonna continue on and allow that to happen and be there, and then choose not to do any other action.
Right.
That I think that's that.
Well, I mean, to me, you know, and I want to hear from other people, but I mean, that's the critical issue, is that's where the rub is when you do all of your intervention, and for whatever reason, be it mental health or whatever, the person does not want to leave, and so what options are available to the city? We want to be fair and kind to people, but we also want to, we want to have the opportunity to ensure that we can change a situation that is not the way it should be. That's the rub. Deb.
Thank you, Brad. So I'm on the Emergency Management Council for Ramsey County as the liaison from my department, and the perennial monthly hot topic is homeless encampments. And, you know, St. Paul has a pretty humane, very soft approach to encampments. But one of the this is like comments and questions. So one of the things that came up in a meeting this past year was that when they eventually have to clear an encampment, one of their commitments under certain circumstances is to keep people's property. And so they need storage, and it becomes extremely expensive especially if the property owners that they're keeping the property for, the tents and the, whatnot, for whatever reason can't claim them, can't get them. And, it's an expense, it's complicated, and you need space for it. So that's one thing that I think about when we, sort of the softer enforcement approach, that there's actually just sort of logistical issues. Is that something that you have any information about, sort of like what it costs and like who's dealing with it and what they do?
I can speak to some of that. So I don't really have the specifics on cost, anything like that. We haven't really had to deal with that scenario frequently. But in our police policy, we do have a pretty robust section about personal property, taking care to collect all of it and store that. We do have the capability in the police department through our property room to be able to handle that intake. If it was a large encampment, we may have to look for some alternate storage, but we have capacity in our property room to take on some of that personal belongings that we may encounter in a situation like this. And then I can also, Kizzy, to your point about mental illness, in our police policy, there's also a section that covers specifically mental illness and not using a 72-hour medical hold as the first kind of form of resolving a homeless issue. So that is spelled out somewhat in police policy, just to make sure that officers are not using mental health holds to try and solve a homeless issue. And our social worker operationally is also kind of a first point of contact along with his house. So she goes out and tries to offer mental health resources as well as other housing resources too. So hopefully that speaks to both your comments there.
And then if I may just continue, so I work in downtown St. Paul in City Hall. And I will say that there is a significant homeless population in the city, and it's sort of starting to converge.
Excuse me.
It's not just sort of along some of the thoroughfares. There's some fence lines where you'll see tents and so forth, but there have been people literally sleeping right in front of the door at City Hall. And I will just say that, there are certain places in the city where, first of all, St. Paul is really struggling to remain a vital downtown. It is struggling mightily and kind of losing the battle. And I am, because of my involvement in the EM Council and everything, I'm very acutely aware, and I'm very concerned for people and their humanity and their dignity and their safety. But I also understand the extreme importance of maintaining a vital downtown, and having people sleeping in front of City Hall is not helpful. It does not make citizens feel safe. That is also the county courthouse. And so, for instance, to give someone, say, 72 hours in certain places like that, say in front of City Hall, the policy that as we're looking at it with 72 hours, I feel sort of, for instance, there are a lot of people that have at best ambivalent feelings about the light rail, what might be occurring on the light rail, what has happened in the past in the light rail, and what goes on at some of the light rail stations. And that's another place where I just think that having it be sort of more traditional community space where people come and go and are not living would be really important. So, in the interest of, and I have also friends who live all over the country who are extremely compassionate people, and generally, very pro social safety net, and for instance, just very liberal people that live in places like Eugene and Portland, where there are significant homeless populations, that they decriminalized, and literally every park you could not take your children to parks anymore. It was just solid encampment. And so I don't anticipate that necessarily here, but the whole idea is that we're being proactive. So I think there are certain spaces in our city where, you know, children have to be able to go to the playground, people have to be able to take public transit, city property, like such as City Hall, needs to be approachable, and yet we need to show compassion. And so when I thought about like the 72-hour time frame for removal, I'm not sure that should apply everywhere. And so I really appreciate you including, you know, how in other cities people are saying, you know, where and where you can't. And it's very difficult because you want to be compassionate, you want to give everyone a chance to sort of access what they need to access to be safe and healthy. And but those are some of the thoughts that I think of because I do work in a metropolitan city that is struggling with homelessness and other issues, and I see it every day when I go to work.
I'm going to go to Kimberly and then Paula.
Excuse me. So, sort of along the lines of what everybody else has been saying, like the question I asked Mike this afternoon was, what are the options in a situation where someone has refused services and has refused to leave, and not necessarily just mental health, anyone. And so, like, I'm wondering, like, if we can, or someone, the police, someone can think of specific things that we can do aside from taking someone to jail or fining them money that they don't have. And I don't know. Like, I haven't come up with a solution myself, but is there a way, you know, other than like bundling them up and taking them to the border, and that's not a viable option either. So what can we do that would, if the situation, if it's a place where they can't remain for safety issues or whatever reason, how can we move someone without taking them to jail?
I think, and Deputy Tate helped me with this one, but nobody's been taken to jail, I don't think, on a misdemeanor like this, right? You don't,
No,
unless there's some other
it's
violence or
Right,
maybe
so-
they threaten somebody or whatever. If that happens, of course, then they're gonna go to,
Yeah, so it's difficult, right? Because there has to be some end to a problem. So what does that look like? And with how it's outlined in policy, it's an ordinance violation through one of the 3 ordinances that you see. Those are all misdemeanor crimes, all the ordinances are, so that kind of, if you take an enforcement action, it follows the state guidelines for misdemeanor violations, right? The penalties, the fines are in place, how much someone could be in jail. I think the fortunate part, and right now I'm just kind of spitballing, but the fortunate part for us is that misdemeanors are prosecuted by our city attorney's office. They have discretion in what cases move forward in the courts or not. And I think with the relationships that we have, that's a conversation that, you know, that maybe we don't, just because a person is cited for that, maybe we don't follow through with actual criminal prosecution on that side of it to impose those fines or that jail time that would be associated with a misdemeanor. So I think that's a discussion that we have to have with the legal department to just kind of have a good understanding of how we're going to approach these situations when they arise. But beyond that, you know, the policy does specifically state, like some other cities, that if we're coming to an enforcement conclusion and there is literally not a bed for a person in the metro to go to, we're not taking that. We're not doing that. That's not the right thing to do.
if you don't provide a choice.
Right. And I think what's really important to kind of understand in the distinction of policies is there's all this work that goes into before we even start this in 12 o'clock. And I know working with his house and just, I was looking at the dashboard just now to try and figure out, well, what's been happening, and The few encampments that we've seen, either through resources or just us having a conversation, they have all resolved themselves within 24 hours, most of them. They're either getting the resource that they need or they're moving on because they don't want to be bothered by us. So we've been fortunate in that respect, but I don't know if that really answers it, but I think, you know, the hard part is that, you know, there has to be some sort of final resolution so that the problems just don't continue perpetuating themselves. And right now, today, that's.
Unless, and again, this is a policy question for the city council, unless you don't have a problem with that. If you don't have a problem with people just continuing to encamp wherever, and you're not using a criminal enforcement mechanism, the encampment will stay. There's no way to magically get these people to move if they don't want to move without some kind of criminal violation. That doesn't mean to jail. It's a misdemeanor. It's like getting a speeding ticket, although that's a petty misdemeanor. Sorry, I know what. But this would be an ordinance violation, which is a regular misdemeanor. Yep. But they're not usually going to jail unless there's some other extenuating circumstance. So I just want to make that clear for the record.
Did you have a follow-up?
Well, just, and this is just me wondering, so is it possible when, like, if, in conversations with the city attorney or say, to say to someone, we won't prosecute if you agree to go to a shelter or et cetera?
That's an Eric question.
Councilmember Wilburn, I think Jason referenced the scenario quite well. I mean, this is the rub of this entire issue, right? I mean, it comes down to that is the ultimate question. We have all of these other side questions that can inform the policy about belongings and storage there, and there's different ways cities approach that. There isn't a legal obligation to store, but some cities incorporate that in their policy and handle it even at a detailed level, inventorying the property and storing it for lengthy periods of time. Other cities, like Minneapolis, deems anything left behind after a closure to be abandoned property and discards it. So that's just the spectrum of approaches can vary there. This question about if someone simply won't leave, what do you do is that's the rub. I would suggest that, you know, ordinance violations in general, and this could be any ordinance that we're talking about. If you have an ordinance violation, there are a limited number of ways we can enforce. The one that's been mentioned is that an ordinance violation is a misdemeanor offense, and the city does prosecute misdemeanors. In Hennepin County, you're aware of the Division of Prosecutorial Responsibility, and we do have prosecutorial discretion. We always maintain that. And we work very closely with our police department here since we're housed in the same building down the hall from one another. And so, yes, I think there would be approaches. It would bear having further discussion about that, about ways we could use that as an incentive to move. But by even asking that question, you're implying that you would be okay with an acknowledgement that there is the potential out there for some sort of criminal enforcement. Having that as a backstop provides you with that. If it's not on the table, you're limited to effectuating your closure policy and working through those channels, and then still having that difficult question of if somebody just won't leave.
But
Paula.
for clarity, Eric, the council, as a body, can't make prosecutorial decisions.
Thank you.
For your office,
Thank
right?
you. Thank you, Julie. Yes, and that's why I reference prosecutorial discretion. That is ultimately a function that lies solely with the attorneys. It's even free. It's free from influence from elected officials, and it is free from influence from staff as well. That is something that I will always fiercely defend. But I can say that it is not often that a misdemeanor charge results in any kind of jail time. There are many ways that those cases can be resolved. And so there is, by going down that path, you're not headed to some inexorable outcome that can't have some nuance to it.
And I just want to make that clear because the policy can't be written to say we can ticket, but then we can't enforce. I mean,
Right.
you can't do
Right.
that. So you can say,
And I wasn't trying to imply that.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
but I just want to make sure, like, if anybody's reading the minutes for this
Right.
meeting,
Right.
Right.
that, the policy can say, here is our general approach, and then beyond it, it's the functions of the city. So,
Right.
anyway,
Got
sorry,
it.
I didn't
Right.
want to belabor that, and we have exactly 2 minutes to get this conversation
Okay,
done.
all right, Paula's next, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, yep.
Rebecca also.
I'll make mine very quick. So comments, I just wanted to second the idea of prioritization of spaces. Quick comment, I've lived in both Washington DC and Moscow and St. Petersburg, Russia, all of which had significant homelessness issues in the 1990s and early 2000s. DC, I lived in a house at a block that had a crack house on it. So the main street in my neighborhood was Mount Pleasant. I had a 5-year-old. I think we have to be realistic about what can happen in those situations. Like, you want to balance that compassion with, your 5-year-old having to step over somebody who's homeless and then exposes himself on the sidewalk as you're walking by. So I think it's being really, careful to lead with compassion, but understand that, when it comes to the safety of our children, or if somebody's having a mental issue, understanding what that could mean if they are left untreated in the community. The consequences of that, again, leading with compassion. So I am, in agreement with the policy as written, and the 72 hours, but maybe having less in certain situations near a school, other things, the park and ride. People need to feel safe getting to work. And then the comment or the question would be, another aspect of this that we haven't really discussed is people living in cars, and that's usually the working poor who are doing that. And we don't have a Walmart, I don't think, in our community, but Walmart actually does allow people to park in their cars and stay overnight. So I was just, comment/question if there's anything that we're doing or thinking of in that regard, if it should come to that, because those people, they're going to jobs, they just can't make rent. And if we have anything that we've thought about in that regard.
We did think about that specifically, because we do have a lot of people that are in cars that come in contact with the police department. Yeah, even if it's not a company that necessarily invites it in, it just happens by a matter of, people going there. Holiday is a good example of that. Holiday won't, what would you say? They wouldn't maybe forcefully.
Yeah, there's a few
remove
different
some.
locations that
Okay.
there's the same individual
Issues,
there every
yeah.
night
Yeah.
in their car sleeping, and we leave them
Okay.
Yeah,
unless
and-
there's a specific complaint. So I would say, that would probably fall under either the private property scenario, where
Okay.
a private property owner may ask for that vehicle to be removed. Otherwise, there are specific parking ordinances that could apply. They're parked on the street for so many hours. In the parks, there's no, the parks have operational hours, or there'd be some prohibition from vehicles being in there after hours. So there are some existing ordinances that could apply to that. And we did talk about vehicles when we were in our work group several different times. And I think that was kind of the conclusion, was there's existing ordinances that could probably address that specific scenario.
But we also recognize that encampments could be a group of, let's just say there's a group of cars camping together, and they're stringing tents between the cars and things like that. That can happen. So we would define that as an encampment as well, even if it
Okay.
was an automobile.
Okay, yeah, no, and I'm saying I'm all for allowing people to, overnight doing that. I'm not saying I want to criminalize or anything like that. I'm just, and I'm glad to know that there are places in the community where private property owners are allowing
They don't
that.
really,
And
yeah.
just, as long as we have that option for people right now, that's just what I wanted to
Yeah,
check.
there's quite a few, actually.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Rebecca.
Thanks, Brad. I want to be careful in the discussion of, not here, but fine there, because I hear a little bit of that in that, well, I work downtown and I know what the situation is downtown, and it is not that way here in Minnetonka. But that doesn't mean we're too good to have homeless people. And so we do, and we may have an issue. And I don't want to say we're going to treat people differently because we're Minnetonka. Like, I want to be really careful about kind of approaching the policy in that way because it just seems really elitist. And I lean on giving everybody the most opportunity to get their situation improved slightly with our help, and giving people time and opportunity. And even if it's on the front yard, I think we have to have some grace for people. Full disclosure, I was the person that said give 7 days notice. I understand that that's not necessarily where the rest of the council is, and I'm okay with 72 hours. I would be really reluctant to truncate that at all. All that being said, on the flip side, we are right now a society where the way we enforce things is through laws and through legal process, and so that is what we have to do. I agree with my colleagues that at Kizzy and Kimberly and the rest of the colleagues that we don't want to rush to that, and certainly have a lot of grace, and we don't want to further criminalize somebody because they can't pay the $75 ticket and then they wind up in a worse situation. We don't want that to happen. So we want to be careful, but I don't see how you can, after you've given everybody every opportunity and the 72 hours, that we can't use the legal process to try to do what we need to do to resolve the issue. I just very briefly, I've thought about it a lot like child support, right? That's how the business that I'm in. Somebody doesn't pay their child support. They get a lot of chances. They can make a payment plan. They can do all these things. It takes a long time. And then finally the hammer is you haven't paid your child support and you've kind of thwarted all the opportunities for us to fix this. And so now there is a criminal or a threat of jail time or something that comes into play because you've chosen to discard all of these other options for resolving it. And I think in the system that we have, I think that's the best we can do. So I'm reluctant, and I would still call it not criminalizing homelessness, but recognizing that that is kind of the last resort as some kind of legal remedy.
And sorry.
Go ahead, yep.
I just want to say too that, like when you're talking about mental health issues and they don't want to go to shelters, I think there are other solutions than, just going to the shelters. If they don't want to do that, maybe help them get on new meds or something like that. I mean, I think there are options there, and it's not just either go to a shelter or not.
And then I will add, first of all, I think we all are unanimous that we want to lead with compassion. That's the first approach. But I also think that there is a difference between enforcement and criminalization. And I think that, I've spent a lot of time in Portland, Oregon. What a beautiful city and what a mess. The homelessness situation is disturbing, and it's everywhere. And you stay downtown in Portland. I used to go running along the river. Or you walk downtown, and before 10 o'clock in the morning, you're stepping over people sleeping in storefronts all over. Not once in a while. Not 1, 50 or 100. We don't want to get there. So, Portland has done a great job on compassion. They've done a horrible job on enforcement. And I think there's a difference. And I think, I do support the policy as written. But I think that there is a difference. We're not going to step in and arrest people who are being difficult as a first step. We're going to give them chances. And I would like to think that we as a city, and I believe we do, have a menu of options and a menu of resources that can help move toward enforcement. But the other piece of it is, I don't think we should provide lifetime storage of property. I don't think any of us get that, and I don't think we should offer that to individuals who are homeless. But we can say, listen, we're going to work with you. We're going to provide some resources. We're going to coach. We're going to provide resources that enable you to get out of this situation. But understand that after a period of time, we are going to remove the situation, and we will store we want to respect property rights, but we are not. That doesn't mean we are a go-to storage entity either. There's going to be a period of time, and the quid pro quo is, we'll store it and keep it safe, but you have to agree to do some things too. It's not just an open end where you get to do whatever you want, and we have no enforcement capability. I think we have to enforce the rules. We have to do it with compassion. And I think we should use the different resources, the homelessness resources. His house is clearly one. There are places, there are hotels, there are temporary shelters for people that they can go to that would not be overly restrictive. I just think having that menu of options available so that we can respond with compassion and solutions, but at the end of the day, that you do need the legal option. I mean, you do need the legal option to say, if you don't do that, ultimately you will be arrested. We do not want to arrest you.
Not arrested. Take it in.
Well, I mean, but I think ultimately, okay.
I'm just asking.
It's an arrest, but
You're right.
Yeah. We're not. You're not. We don't want to prosecute anybody. We want them to get into a safe place off a public property is what we want. But I do think you do need to have at the end of the day, after you've tried a lot of things, that you do need the force of the law to ultimately get things done if somebody is not going to cooperate. But we're going to go the extra mile is the way I like to think about it, and hopefully we never get there. But I do think that we need that capability.
And as far as property storage, I mean, it's taken up a lot of space and it's a huge expense.
Yeah.
They're really, it's becoming a whole other job trying to problem solve that kind of new problem. So, but
I think you make that very finite.
right, exactly. But even then, you have to then dispose of the property. So it's a real job.
It's not free.
It's not free and it's not fun, and it takes staff time, and
Yep.
and they don't relish getting rid of people's property either. So it's just a whole other thing. But I agree with you. I think you need select boards and.
We want to help people in every way we can,
Yeah.
but I also think that if a legal option is not a last resort, then we're just kidding. You're writing the rules. We're not. So that's one. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to add? Otherwise, we'll move on.
All right, that's a hard one.
Well, it's a very hard one, but and it's real, and and as has been said, we're not immune. These things happen, and I'm a believer that without housing, people simply do not have a chance. They do not have a chance, and I'm somebody who believes in chances,
Yeah.
and so I want everybody to have a chance. But we do have situations, and we have a city to run too. All right.
We will, the next step for us is to bring back the policy to you for formal adoption. That means it goes in your council
packet.
policy book. And then hopefully hopefully we don't have this situation, but if it does happen, that's how we will react. And I think that helps the staff just understand what the procedural steps are and what's acceptable to the council for moving along. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it is tough.
longer
That's a tough.
than we expected, but that was the hardest one, I think, in terms of discussion. So that was a good 15 minutes. So
Thanks, everybody.
we'll move on to, I think, manufactured homes were the next highest vote getter, if you will. And I'll tell you a little. Yeah, moving. Oh, it's stopped.
There we are.
Okay. So something that has been on the minds of all of us as we had put together kind of the detailed information about some of these stick-built situations, like with the twin home and the Habitat project. You know, the dollar figure in there, it just unsustainable for future ownership product. So that's why we're looking at manufactured homes. I'll tell you a story. Picture up on the right-hand side of the slide is my mother-in-law's home. It's a manufactured home. It was put onto her property, her farm property, about 5 years ago. We were in the throes of a caregiving issue with my father-in-law. She needed a one-level living, couldn't live in the farmhouse. It was too many stairs, the bathrooms weren't right, no roll-in shower, you know, all of that. So manufactured home was her solution to the issue that we were facing as a family. And I don't share a lot of personal information, but it was an interesting process because as a family we got to see how much it costs, what it was like to build this home, how it came together on the property, how long it took, which by the way was under a month by the time we ordered and got all the finishes. By the way, when Alicia and Kendall and I, we went on a road trip to go see some of these units, 18 model homes we saw at a site in Hutchinson. There's lots of vendors, and we kind of equate it to like a car dealership, right? There's only about 3 or 4 makers in Minnesota that make manufactured homes. But there's lots of dealers who sell them. So this is one of the dealers. They sell multiple types of manufactured homes. Now, just a little bit on the glossary of manufactured homes, okay? So some people say trailer, some people say mobile home, some people say manufactured home, and then some people mess it up with modular. Don't mess up manufactured with modular. That's just, they're not the same thing. So the picture of my mother-in-law's, that is an actual manufactured home. It came in 2 pieces. So it comes together, the crane sets it down, puts it together. They seam the roof line. And then on the left side where you see the garage, the attached garage, that's built on site. So it's stick built and attached to the manufactured home. So that's kind of how it worked in our situation. But what's interesting about manufactured homes is you're able to pick from a variety of layouts. So this home that she has is a 3-bedroom. She actually used this one as an office. So it's really 2-bedroom, an office, and 2-bath home, and with large dining and living area. It's one of the bigger homes that they sell at this site. Some of the smallest, would you say, was the one?
Maybe like a 700 square foot.
700 square feet. Yeah, it was very nice, though. It actually felt pretty spacious, that 700 feet. That was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath type situation. So you can kind of get everything in between. And the interesting thing is, I think a lot of people just think, okay, that's the look I want and that's the look I get. But you actually get a menu of options. So if I don't like the layout of that kitchen, I can pick a different kitchen layout. If I don't like that particular setup of bathroom, you can pick out the bathroom type. And that's how it's manufactured for you. So it's more individualized than you think. So why does the city care about manufactured housing? Well, because we can't think of any other way to provide affordable ownership in the city without trying this. So what we're thinking about doing, and we have to tell Eric, is it legal to do this? One of our first check-ins was with him. Trying to figure out how a city would go about this. How do we purchase a manufactured home? How do you publicly bid it because it's over the amount that you would have to publicly bid? And then putting it on a site that we already have own, whether it be on Welland or Belmont or even the back side of where the twin homes are going on Roland, that's another opportunity. It could be on all the property that we're talking about. So I think one site, try it, see how it works, see what the costs are. If we get one of the more modestly sized homes, we probably could do it in the $300,000 range. That's not the lot cost, but the house cost. We were able to, was about $120 a square foot cheaper than stick built. That's about right? And, 5 years later after my mother-in-law's, I'm looking for I'm looking for, how's it holding up? It's actually holding up pretty well. It's very airtight. The windows are very nice. Her heating bills are low. So some of the things I was concerned about in buying a manufactured home just haven't shown up. Not yet anyway. Is it as long lasting as stick built? Absolutely not. It is a shorter life cycle for a home like this. 25 years, I would say, not a 50-year type home. I don't know that manufactured home manufacturers agree with that statement, but that's just in my analysis of how they're built and how they're put together. The other thing is you don't have to put a basement under these. These are attached to a foundation system, but there's no full foundation in the house. My mother-in-law's house, there's an actual crawl space where the HVAC equipment and the other items, electrical, et cetera, are under the floor in the garage space and under part of the house. So it's kind of an interesting setup, but the cost of not doing a basement is what makes it so affordable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you put them on it with a basement?
You can, but then the cost just went phew. So add another, I would say $60,000 to do a full basement under it, and that's unfinished. So I think that's the trouble with some of these is I think a lot of people then go, oh, let's add a basement, let's do this, and then then the affordability just goes out the door. So, but we can give you some of those numbers. I think we did that with one of the twin home where we kind of said, well, if you do this, this is how much it would cost. If you do that, that's how much. So we'll do kind of the same setup if this is of interest like council. I don't know. So I'll stop there. That's my pitch on manufactured homes.
All right, council, questions? Kimberly?
Yeah, so I'm wondering what property cost is in Minnetonka. So, since I live down the street from the Welland Avenue
Yeah.
property,
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's like a half-acre lot. It's a good
Is
size.
that the north-south road? I always get them mixed up. Belmont's east-west,
Yes.
Welland's
Oh,
north-south.
Welland's north.
Yes.
So the one on Welland is the one we need to tear down
Right.
because it's in bad shape. That's more of a long lot, very narrow though.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, like, say we put a $300,000 house on that property, how much would how much would the land cost add to the sale price?
You could decide yourselves how to do that. So you can just do the land right down and say 0 for the land and sell the house and land together, but no land cost. And then they would just mortgage based on that. And then put a covenant on the property for resale so that you don't lose traction on it continuing to be affordable lot. Kind of like what we did on the twin homes, almost identical actually. So that's one way to handle it. Now, if you want to make a more moderately priced house and charge like $100,000 and some for the land, you could do the total package for under $450,000, which would be more of a middle type range of housing. It'd be under what your average is in Minnetonka, but $300,000 keeps us at the 80%. 305.
AMI?
Between 60 and 80.
Yeah, so that keeps you in a different area median income.
And we're saying, when you're saying a moderate home, are you saying, your mother-in-law has 3 bedrooms, 2 bath? Is that what you're talking, or are you talking?
Yeah, at the time, that was under 300 to do that whole setup.
And how many square feet is it roughly?
2,000.
Okay.
So That was a really good setup. Now, that was 5 years ago, so fast forward. That house probably would be more like 350 today. Yeah. So the houses we looked at, I mean, the largest one, there was one bigger.
There was one that was over 2,000.
Yeah, we wouldn't, that probably wouldn't be a choice we would make, just because it was too large and too expensive, so,
I
anyway.
have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
So the property that you're thinking about putting it on Welland,
Maybe.
well, whatever,
Mhm.
whichever, would it be more than one?
I think Welland, we could not do that. It's just too skinny.
It's too
and
skinny?
too narrow. The one on Baker, we might be able to do that. We might. That might work there.
And would that be zoning?
Yeah, is it currently zoned?
Depends on how the zoning ordinance works out.
I mean.
Current zoning, let's just,
Yeah, this would not be this year's project, so it would probably be
Okay, okay,
post
I see.
zoning. We have to figure out the legal aspects of it and then figure out, and then it'd probably be early next year we would propose it, which should be kind of the same timing as your zoning.
Becca?
I think that this, the kind of the sticker shock and us losing our wind when we saw the twin home pricing come in
Right.
reinforces for me we can do a lot, and as a city I'm comfortable taking these lots that we have and writing down a part of the land cost or doing our part to contribute. But making it so that the amount of subsidy that is necessary to make these homes affordable is much, much less than what we're seeing on the twin homes. Because that's just not realistic. That's not something we can do on a regular basis. So I think this is worth, I'm not rubber stamping it now, but I like the idea. I think we have to be creative, and I think this is something worth looking into further going forward.
Yeah,
Kizzy.
sure.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, but I do have a concern about, long term. You said 25 years. Well, that's kind of your
That is
thought
just
process.
my-
Yeah. So my thought process around it, if we're gonna write down the land or give the land, however we do it, and you said covenant. What does the covenant look like? And is it going to be another land trust type deal where you put the 99-year lease on the land? Or if someone purchased it, would it be a way that they can also make sure that they're getting some generational wealth and something like this? And I don't know if there would be an opportunity to make sure that the folks are creating some type of generational wealth, because at $300,000 or $400,000, to me, there has to be some type of generational wealth in that. And so what would that look like? That's my biggest issue. But other than that, I think it's a really good idea. I used to want to live in, I call them trailers. I used to want to live in one when I was younger. I thought they were nice. And actually, I went to St. Louis, and my aunt was renting one, and it was really nice. I was like, I still want to live in one of these things, so I think they're nice.
So just a clarification about trailers. So when people say trailers or mobile homes, typically the way in which so if you look at the foundation, the house, my mother-in-law's house.
This looks different though.
It's attached to a footing, basically. A mobile home or a trailer, as you would refer to it, has some mobility, meaning it was
Can move.
traveled to the site and then it's skirted, right?
Yeah.
And the sewer and water is insulated underneath the skirting and it's anchored to the site. Typically,
Okay.
they won't move once they're placed,
Right.
but you can.
But this,
This is different.
okay.
So, they
But is
do
it something
make
like that,
they
though?
do make trailers and mobile homes, and so they call them park models. It's a little different. They
Yeah.
have a fancier name for them,
Yeah.
They get more that way.
but they are just like what you're talking about, and those range for about a 550 square foot park model. That's about an $85,000, $90,000 purchase. So, I call them like a tiny skinny home,
Oh,
basically.
yeah. So this is different from that.
This is different because it's more permanent.
Okay.
I would say it doesn't have like smaller appliances. It doesn't have smaller cabinets. You know, you go into one of these manufactured homes. It's like living in a traditional stick-built home. I think what you notice is maybe the finishes aren't quite as high end. You know, more laminate countertops. There's no granite. There's, you know, that sort of thing.
I think what I see as the biggest difference when you think of a traditional trailer home, they're very long and skinny.
Yeah.
And you have a bedroom on this side, a bedroom on this side, very
Narrow.
and it's hard to have like a nice kitchen and living room in those spaces. If you
Have a
think
slide
about
out.
stacking two of those side by side, it gives you a lot more opportunity to have.
It's a double wide.
Yeah, I was going to say
It's a
they
double
started making
wide.
a double wide one.
You can call it a double wide.
That's double wide.
That's what it is. That's what that is in the corner, double wide. And some people have all kinds of vocabulary about these
Yeah.
things, but it is different than a mobile.
Yeah.
Right.
I have
Deb?
a question about, so let's say we get to the end of its useful life. What then?
That's
mean,
what I was wondering too. What
it's-
happens?
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
Well-
like deconstructing a regular home, tearing down, you know, it's not.
Why not?
But that's I mean, my question
Cabinets
is
are
it-
the same. I
Mhm.
mean, maybe they're not as, you know, substantial as a stick-built home. Bathroom has the same fixtures, same kinds of bathtubs, that sort of thing. So I would submit to you, not on the scale maybe.
But sort of, but the other end, the other question for me is because the useful life is shorter. It feels like we're solving a problem, not exactly short term, but maybe medium term, and creating, you know, another issue
Later.
25 years from
But
now.
Could they be renovated later? Like a-
Yeah,
I
I mean,
mean,
what's
like-
interesting about these homes is that it's just like a normal house. You replace the roof, you replace the siding, you replace flooring, you replace, it's all the same. It's not like you can't do some of those things.
Yeah.
However,
No.
you know, does it last as long? I don't know. I don't know. And we're finding out. We're gonna find
really
out.
Yeah.
You know,
I was gonna, I mean, you
because
kinda
that's
answered,
what
but I was
houses
gonna
are.
ask if there's a way to extend the life of these, you know, like,
Yeah.
just like, you know.
I mean, I'm
replacement orders and
hopeful
all
that
this.
this has already gotten better since, you know, years past. Think of the 1970s, more mobile homes that we're thinking of, right?
I lived in.
Where you lived in
Or
a
the-
mobile home?
I lived in two different.
Way different, right? This looks way different.
So, yeah, you know, I think a couple of thoughts come to mind. I mean, when you talk about the life expectancy, we do so much with housing that has a 30-year shelf life. I mean, we talk about 30 years. I'd love for us to be able to say, let's talk about this as 30 years, not 25. You know, because that fits with a lot of what we do. But I just think I favor this because we have to try new stuff. And we have to figure out how to do that. And I think that, you know, I think a home like this that's well maintained, and maybe that's part of the deal, is that we help people ensure that they're properly maintaining this so that maybe you can get 30 or 40 years out of it, not 25. But I also think that, you know, deconstructing homes and tearing down homes, I mean, it happens in Minnetonka all the time. Tearing down something like this is much less than tearing down a stick-built house. So, you know, I think if the numbers work and we can provide new construction housing for people at an affordable price, I think we have to try stuff. We have to find a path to try stuff.
I think it's exciting.
Cool. We do too, I think. And what we wanted from you is just kind of a nod to go to the next step, and I think I
Yeah.
hear that from you. There's enough of you saying, yes, let's try to figure it out. And then the next steps for you would be, we'd have the legal research. There's some issue on financing these structures too. I
Right.
have to tell you, it wasn't easy in my personal life to get this thing financed. So just happen to have a good relationship with a local banker to make that happen, but I want to make sure that that's an easy thing to do, and I don't know that it always is easy with manufactured housing. So I want to make sure that hurdle is crossed, and then we'll come back to you, do a report, and do a proposal of where we think it could go.
I will,
You know, that reminded me of one more question, because do insurers look?
No problem. Insurance is not a problem. Financing is not as straightforward, unless they've dealt with it a lot, unless their bank has dealt with a lot of manufactured homes. Because, Stigma? Oh, I don't know if it's stigma. Some of it could be, it's more like, where do they place this in their portfolio? Is it a house? Is it a manufactured house? Is it a mobile home? Is it you
Right.
know, it's more, have they caught up with the financial packages for these things? Yeah.
so I will tell you, tonight's meeting is my 4th meeting on housing in the last 5 days. I mean,
Oh,
been
sorry.
talking a lot about housing, but in the meeting we had today with several mayors and the league, one of the mayors sent a link on Champion Homes,
That's
which
what this is.
which is, you know,
That's the.
So they've got an interesting website. I mean, I've got it up now, and it's just interesting, and it talks about modular homes. It talks about manufactured homes. It provides pictures. It's interesting. So I'm not suggesting you all go there now, but it's, you know, if you just Google Champion Homes, you can get an idea of what we're talking about.
Highland is another manufacturer. Champion, Highland, and what's the third one? Kendall, do you remember? Okay. But those are the main manufactured. This one was built in Owatonna. the home
Okay.
I'm showing you. Okay, we'll move
right.
on to legacy, and that's Alicia's turn. So, get to hear from everybody tonight.
Excellent. That's good.
All right, switching gears. So this is one of the things that Julie and I have been thinking about
Since
for the
you came
last,
here.
yeah, 9 years since I started at the city. We get this question a lot, you know, how can we encourage folks to preserve their existing housing as affordable moving forward for the next generation? So we put together this Legacy Housing Initiative handout because we're really trying to start an awareness kind of campaign that homeowners, whether it be single family, townhome, condo owners, multifamily, they can already do this without any financial assistance from the city. They may need a little help with you know, securing the legal documents or whatever it may be, but this is an opportunity that's available now. So with this, the city already in many ways preserves affordability through its index units, which we've talked about a lot, where the maximum sales price is set over the years. The partnership with Homes Within Reach, and through property for redevelopment, which we just discussed, the Welland, Belmont properties and the Roland properties. So those are all ways that the city can contribute. But this is really aimed at providing residents with the various avenues to preserve their housing for the future. So what this would look like is working with an individual property owner to determine what their goals are for preserving the legacy in their existing housing. So, you know, they may want to provide their home, you know, through their estate planning, or they may be moving and they want to preserve their affordable housing now. I mean, there's lots of different ways you can look at it, to those, you know, earning between 50 and 120% of the AMI, area median income. So what that could look like on the single household side would be, you know, working through Habitat for Humanity, the Twin Cities Land Bank, which they could sell their property to for long-term ownership with that group, Homes Within Reach again, and then also they could just on their own record a covenant on their property that would maintain their home affordable for the long term, which we haven't, I don't think we've had one in the community so far,
Mm-mm.
but that's what this program would encourage. And then on the multi-unit side, helping with connect to organizations that are philanthropic that can provide the resources to continue the affordability. So there's a kind of a different menu of options that one could look at, and it would really be on the staff side to help them figure out what that option would be. So we've done some research with the different communities that are doing some of this with and without incentives. And currently what we offer is, we have programs that help people preserve their homes through home repair programs and those types of programs, but there are other opportunities out there that help preserve the long-term affordability. So I think we'll show the video and then we can talk about some of the other options. But one of the options was the Housing Legacy Program in Boulder. And we'll cue this up for you. We hope that it works.
I hope the volume works, I don't know.
So in Boulder, I'll just give them an overview. The homeowner places an interim covenant on their property to restrict the future sales price of the home. A permanent covenant is placed at the time of a closing. So the home is required to be sold through the city. They sign an interim covenant, and then at a different point in time, when they're ready to move the property over, the permanent covenant is recorded. And then the city staff manages that transaction. So when they're ready to engage that permanent covenant, the city gets involved to do the buyer requirements and those types of things. And this is the council member from Boulder who was elected to enter her home into this program. So this is a video of this sound.
Janice has done an amazing thing.
This was the scene at the city council meeting where Janice Salazzo was honored for her work with the city and unprecedented donation.
Janice has selflessly decided to donate her home to benefit affordable home ownership through the Housing Legacy Program.
Ms. Salazzo's decision to take action with the city and give back to the community came from her deeply rooted belief in all of us in Boulder playing a part in helping one another.
I believe that we all have a responsibility to each other, and as I've gotten older, maybe because I've had more time and more comfort and more ability, I've taken that sense of responsibility more seriously.
So here's how the Housing Legacy Program actually works.
Someone writes their will, they can leave their home or their apartment or whatever it is that they own to the city permanently affordable housing programs.
Kurt Fernhaber, the Deputy Director of Housing, explained how the program fits into the city's housing goals.
So the Housing Legacy Program will actually allow us to preserve existing housing, and it will allow low-income and middle-income people to live within our existing neighborhoods and really give the same sort of benefits that she received out of her house over those many years.
Fernhaber also expressed his anticipation for more community members to follow in Salazzo's footsteps.
Hopefully she will inspire other community members to follow in her footsteps and to really take a very bold step in creating a legacy from what they've had in Boulder to benefit other families in perpetuity.
It will stimulate other ways of thinking for people in terms of what they can do to become more actively involved in supporting a vibrant life of diverse groups in this community.
The city council meeting concluded with the dedication of May 5th, from this day forward, honoring Ms. Salazzo.
Janice Salazzo Housing Legacy Day and Cinco de Mayo, and urge all members of our community to recognize this special occasion.
So that gives you a little idea of what we're thinking about with this initiative. So one might ask, why would someone want to do this? Well, it preserves the legacy of wanting to keep housing affordable long-term. There's some other benefits as you saw in this video, the resident can stay in their home until there is a point where they would enter it into the program. The social benefit of preserving affordable housing, it can streamline the sales process. So if you have it set out that you want to do this, you can get the paperwork set up ahead of time, and there's some benefit in that. And there's also a tax benefit for those that are donating their home, preserving their housing. Yeah, so those are some of the ways in which
Do you want to go to that? Yeah, there you go.
might consider it.
So this is the marketing
Yeah.
piece, right?
Yep, that's our marketing piece, just hot off the press. So our
Right.
next steps would be really creating some marketing plans and materials, and that might look like more videos on social media and things explaining what this really is and trying to get some interest in it, and then working with our legal team to figure out our documents to help with the declaration. So just
And this
kind
would
of
have
gauge
been-
some interest in it and see if it's
Yeah.
sticks.
Yeah, and I think it would have been perfect for the situation where we're dealing with that gentleman in Belmont who wanted to sell the city because he said, I want families to live here. And he wanted to basically entrust his home and his brother's home to the city. And that was the promise we made. We would make sure it had some type of affordability tied in. So it would have been a perfect program for someone like him. So that's that's a good case study for that. So.
And I think where the difference is here, at least with our marketing materials, is the city doesn't have any financial investment into this program or
Other than
initiative,
helping.
Other than helping with draft legal documents. And I think that you left it fairly open because I think every situation is going to be a little bit different on what we're trying to preserve with individuals.
Right.
Comments, Rebecca?
I just have, I guess, kind of a question. Over the years, one of the things, and I'll credit the mayor with this, but he's talked a lot about, when we hear from residents who are maybe house rich and cash poor, and they want to age in place, but they can't keep up, their income doesn't keep up with taxes or maintenance and those types of things. I mean, is there an opportunity? I mean, I think this is a great start. But, I think we could potentially get more traction if we provide opportunity for folks who want to stay to partner with the city so that, there would be some level of assistance that keeps them in their home, and in exchange, they commit to, some kind of covenant or affordability limitation. Something that, I don't need a response to that now, but something as we look forward and think about how we use that delivery tax money to, is this a new initiative that really makes sense? Something along those lines.
Kimberly?
Yeah, so I was just pulling up my notes from Tampa where I was on a housing discussion at NLC. And in Wilmington, Delaware, they talked about their legacy home project.
Delaware, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Maria Cabrera was the council member who presented, if that helps.
Thank you.
Anyway, so they talked about their legacy home project, and they were able to get one family to sell 3 properties, and all they had to do was they had to name the project after those families, and so like there were plaques put on the house saying, the Robinson
Sign.
House or
Easy.
something like that.
Done.
But
Done. Check.
But more importantly, they referenced an NLC example, and I just did a quick search on NLC for legacy housing, and there's an article came up: housing recovery, homelessness response, and community resilience. A look at U.S. legacy cities. So, I think NLC has resources and examples of different cities and what they've been doing that might be helpful.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Other comments or questions?
I guess my question always goes back to if the legacy program happens and someone say, hey, I want to put my house in the legacy program, and these houses would be for sale, and then someone else come and purchase the home at an affordable rate, will there still be like some type of covenant, like the lease, the 99-year lease again? Well, you know,
Depends. Depends on which way they go. So if they go with, can you go back to the options? So you could sell to various companies, whether that be nonprofit Habitat for Humanity, whether it be the Homes Within Reach, where you would have a lease situation, or if you just want to go with the covenant, then no, that 99-year lease would not be part of the transaction.
when you say covenant, what is the covenant? Because I mean, like, I think of what
Sure.
does that mean by covenant? Can you define that a little bit better?
I think we should use the city attorney in this case, so.
Because I just want to know what a covenant is.
Because I know
kind of got
that-
an idea, but I'm not for
I think he would
sure.
be perfect at explaining it.
Councilmember Coakley, it is a legal document that in this case, a property owner could execute that would place some sort of restriction on their bundle of sticks that's associated with real property ownership in some fashion. So restricting one of their real property rights in some fashion. It runs with the land, and so it applies against subsequent purchasers of the land. It runs with the land, not the person who puts it on the property.
So it's recorded.
So it's
against
recorded,
the
correct. So
Property title.
Okay.
would be discovered and doing due diligence on a title search by someone who would be interested in the property if they weren't otherwise made aware of it.
Well, okay. I don't know. I guess I still don't quite. I understand that it runs with the land, so I don't know. I guess I needed to go a little bit more deeper on like, what does that mean that it runs with the land? Like,
It would be
There's a
like the twin
restriction
home.
on appreciation, so it may say
so it's kind of like
you
the-
can't, it can't appreciate more than, I think some of them say 50% of the average appreciation in that period of time.
Right.
okay. So it's very similar to the land.
To retain
trust
the affordability, there's a
Well,
restriction
the
on
difference in
the
land trust is-
appreciation.
So
is
99
you're
year.
not, it's not a land lease deal. A covenant is, the whole package
It can't-
of the house is, there's no land lease involved.
Right.
It's a covenant just to say you are committing to this kind of
Agreement.
agreement.
Yeah.
And that agreement can be different for every, there's no parameters. It just says, here, we're gonna try to enact something that helps with affordability.
Yeah.
To
Whatever
keep it
works
affordable.
for that owner.
Right. It's up
Right.
to the owner.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It's their choice how they want to structure
So it could be 60%, 70%, 80%, whatever they choose.
We got to
they can
get
say-
to a point of where
Yeah.
it's affordable, though.
Right, right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
that
I
makes
just-
sense?
Yeah, it does. I was just trying to figure out what does that mean for the person who, potentially could purchase a home like that, and what does it does
Well, they
for
get in
equity
at a
for them.
cheaper rate.
Right,
That's-
right.
Yeah, and then they're having to sell it at a cheaper rate. So theoretically, their equity
Yeah.
is not as much as a regular transaction if the market has a big jump.
Right. Okay.
But in Boulder, what's happening is people are buying up those smaller houses and building $1 million homes. And this happens here too, so the
Right.
idea is preserving some of those existing single family.
So,
Yeah.
Or condos.
Or condos, or
Yeah.
it could be multifamily. There's lots of different
Right.
things that it could be.
Doesn't have to just be single family.
Right.
you know, a couple of comments that I've got. I mean, I like this concept. I like the program. But I also, one of the things that I've talked about, and Rebecca referenced it, is the opportunity. I mean, there are people who, don't want the McMansion to go where their house used to be. They want to keep their house affordable. They like the way Minnetonka is, and that's an incentive for them to do it, to do something like this, and to avoid that developer coming in and buying their house and turning it into something they don't want it to be. But when you sell something, you lose control. So this is, the legacy piece, I think, really makes a lot of sense. But one of the things that this idea that I've had for a number of years now is the fact that senior citizens want to stay in their homes. I mean, I had an aunt who said, the only way you're getting me out of this house is in a box. and she largely pulled that off. But you know, they want to stay there, but houses as you age are less safe for you. There are better places, but they don't want to go to the old folks' home. They want to live in their home as long as they can. And so I think that sometimes there might be an opportunity for government entities to step in and say, okay, we are going to help you stay in your home. We're going to go through it and make sure it's safe. We're going to put grab bars and ramps and things like that to make your house more livable. The quid pro quo is that we are going to give you a value of your house today. And you can stay there as long as you physically are able. There are costs associated with the improvements that we provide. We're not going to charge you for those. We're going to keep track, and we're going to attach that to your home. So we value your home when you sign up for the program. We make improvements to enable you to stay in it longer, because that is going to be way cheaper for you and your heirs. The longer you can stay in your house, the cheaper it's going to be. But it does cost something. We're not going to charge you out of pocket. But then when you move, you agreed to, let's say you stayed there 10 years, and you stayed there 10 years longer than you were able to, or would have otherwise been able to. We're going to tally up all the costs of the snow shoveling and the lawn mowing and the home improvements that we did. And we're going to subtract that from the price that we agreed to when you signed up for the program. We're going to pay the city back for those costs, and then your house is affordable because you sold it at an agreed to price a long time ago. So you preserve the affordable housing, which saves a future family a lot of money, but it also saves the senior citizen who lives in that house much longer a lot of money. And it does two things. Senior citizen wants to stay in their home as long as they physically can, and the future homeowner gets an affordable house, and we don't have McMansions all over Minnetonka. Now that's a big program. There's a lot of moving parts there.
And then
but
they may not need the ramp or the grab bars and all of the things, right?
Well, that's right. But I mean
Life estates.
But it does solve a number of problems. I mean, and the other thing is, I think if there was a mechanism, and I don't know if we could use our LAHA dollars for this, or maybe an organization like Homes Within Reach or Habitat. When you have a relative die and you're the fortunate person who inherits that house, that's a nice gift. It's an asset, but it's also a problem. You've got a house that you have to get rid of, and frankly, you don't care how much you get for it. You just want to get rid of it because you don't want to deal with, caring for that property. And so, I think taking advantage of those real life situations to create a supply of homes and is an opportunity for our partner organizations, but also cities. And I was even wondering when I read this, would it make sense to take some of our Affordable Housing Trust Fund money and say, if you put your program, if you sell your house to Habitat or Homes Within Reach, the city's going to throw in $10,000. We're going to give you an incentive to do that, to build that supply of homes, because I can tell you, as a board member, that's the challenge: finding homes for these organizations. And if we did that and said, we could take some of our 40, I don't know if it's legal, but if we could take some of our, but we don't worry about that, right? We've got a good city attorney. But if we could use some of our Affordable Housing Trust Fund monies to provide an incentive for people to put their home, because I want to preserve the cheapest affordable housing we can come up with is naturally occurring affordable housing. So anything we can do to create incentives to preserve affordable housing makes sense. It's money well spent. It's a good investment. So I'm done now, but I have a few ideas along these lines.
Got it.
Mike.
Well, just to add to the idea generation here.
No, he has more.
As we're hearing the conversation, this is a good one. I think about the upcoming Metro Cities legislative committees. We have the Minnesota City Committee starting. Another idea to throw out there, and Julie, you'll know this better than me, or perhaps Eric as well. Going back to Rebecca's point, I like trying to find all good points, but I was thinking about Rebecca's comment about, is there a way to, if this, then that kind of scenario? And what comes to mind for me is, should we be advocating perhaps a change in state law for tax abatements? Could there be a way to look at tax abatement scenarios where homeowner, you know, 10 years worth of tax abatements in exchange for, you know, your house being put into a program? To me,
Right.
there's some attractiveness in there, looking at some.
The originating owner or whatever,
Yeah.
yeah.
Some property tax abatement scenarios where that's the incentive for the homeowner, where it's getting tough to stay in their house, and so providing some of that property tax incentives might be in exchange where they they stay in their house, the city ends up with the house, they stay in it.
And it stays an affordable
I would
house.
submit to you, we can do that today.
Think so?
Yeah, because you can do a
I didn't
tax
know if
abatement.
under the tax, I don't know the tax abatement law that thoroughly.
We
or
can,
what qualifies under
but
state
you
law.
wouldn't get the county portion, or you could only tax abate the city portion.
City portion,
That's
yeah.
right, it's only the city
Right.
portion, that's correct.
But even that would make a difference for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
mean,
just didn't know state statute, that
Interesting.
authority was there.
I mean, we frequently as council members get the question, and we hear from people who talk about being taxed out of their homes. And I know, I mean, I talked to Kent Carlson, the mayor of Deep Haven. He said, we've got this time and time again. We've got relatively modest homes in Deep Haven, but they're really expensive. And the tax, as your value goes up, your taxes go up. And they have people that are just fit to be tied because they have to leave their home that they've lived in for 30 years because they can no longer afford the taxes. They're retired, they're on fixed incomes. And, you know, and that slays me. I mean, that just kills me as an elected official that we you know, so if there was a way to slide, you know, do something that was in the public interest that could avoid that problem and enable people to stay in their houses longer, I think that's figuring that out is probably difficult but worthwhile.
I want to put these ideas, the tax abatement, the senior, I'm going to put those on future programming considerations, and this should have been in the EIP, not in this discussion, but we'll add it so
We
that
can talk
don't-
about it at the right time.
Well, because I don't want to lose track of, because
Right.
these are programs that have to be developed. you
Yeah,
know,
this
and-
is not,
Yeah, this is not something we can enact like in this
Right.
iteration, so.
But they seem.
But I don't want to lose,
but there
because I
might be a
think some of
retired
those
mayor
ideas
who
are
could
really
probably be working
stimulating,
on some of
so.
this stuff.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes left, Mayor, and
Yes.
we have 4 subject matters to cover.
Okay, all right.
So we're
Well,
not doing very well in time management.
Okay,
and,
well,
so I have the next one as ownership.
Update on our ownership
Yeah.
programs, which was in the EIP and it's
Yeah.
coming up again, so maybe.
Do you want
wanna
to, was
skip
there
it?
something
Or is there
specific
something-
on ownership that you wanted to talk about? So the down payment assistance programs or rehab programs or pathways? You had it rated kind of high, so I don't want to skip over it if you had specific.
anyone, what are your comments, interests, anything you want to know?
I mean, I think the point's still kind of floating from the EIP discussion, just about, you know, if we're not getting houses, and, you know, are we making the best use of funds? But that I think is a conversation, perhaps even for next year.
Right. Are there houses out there to do the program?
And I really think in some ways, I mean, all of the things we just finished talking about are related to home ownership. And I think we are all committed to finding ways to help people own homes in Minnetonka affordably. And we're interested in creative approaches to that.
I just got a comment in regards to, I don't know if this would be under home ownership, but, and I talked to Mike about this several times, and y'all know my thing, and I'm not going to, how you say, just keep talking about it, but my thought process is always going to be, how can we influence programs? If we're funding the programs, then we should be able to influence them. And so if we continue to help fund land trusts or Homes Within Reach, then I think we should be able to influence how they do the program and just make it more equitable for the people who's purchasing the homes. That's going to always be my argument about it, or statement. So if we're talking about equity and we're talking about doing things different, that's just my comment.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, Julie, back to
Okay,
you.
our next subject is HIA, natural occurring affordable housing.
Housing improvement areas?
Yes. So, I'm not sure, other than, kind of the two most recent projects. The last one was it's under construction right now, $12 million of improvements. Villas at Chasewood, if you're not familiar, if you ever are down in that area, you can see the construction going on, siding, windows, roofs, you name it, it's being redone.
Amazing.
It will be great when it's done. How many prepayments do we have on that?
There were 49 prepayments, which
So 50 out of 170 some units prepaid their assessments, so that
How
was
much was
actually
the assessment for?
for the $12 million of improvements,
Yeah, they divided up amongst all the folks. How,
about 72,000 a unit.
oh, they paid it up front?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Some people,
Nice.
49 of the 170 some.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, kind of an interesting project. And the Cloud9 continues to pay their fees for their 4.2 million? Around there, for their project. We still haven't quite paid off we internally financed Cedar Ridge, if you remember, a long time ago. We did those
The
are
first
probably the
one.
most affordable condominiums in our city. They range from 110 to 150,000. They're right at Cedar Lake Road. So that one's still in a payoff situation, but they'll be paid off pretty soon. Bye, Jason. Thank you for coming. So we continue to see, I can't remember, how many inquiries have we had this year from homeowners associations?
A handful, usually about 2 or 3 a year.
2 or 3 a year will
Sometimes
call
they
us.
call back.
So we'll get a call from, we had one on Plymouth Road where they had a siding problem and they weren't able to finance it internally. We haven't heard back from them. Breckenwood, they had how all their streets needed to be done. We haven't heard back from them. So there's just a lot of contact with our town home associations. If you remember that we have about 4,000 folks living in condominiums or townhomes. I had an interesting exchange with someone who was interested in buying at the villas. It was an email, and she was indicating that why is the city why are we subsidizing projects like this? And I said, for like maybe investors to buy these units and then make big money on them, that sort of thing. And I said, well, we're not subsidizing. The city's not, in these HIAs, there's no city money going into it. We're the conduit for financing. So there's definitely a misunderstanding. When the
Yeah.
city's involved, for some reason, folks think that there's some kind of city money. Right, the city's
Yeah.
paying $12 million to improve these. We're not. We're collecting the money for them to do it. It's just, so there's I think we have some marketing to do and some understanding to do, but this isn't the last of them, and I don't think we've seen the highest HIA. I'm sure there's larger ones out there that will continue to, we'll face in the next coming years. So just a report
Great.
on that.
Thanks. So council, any questions? Kimberly?
Yeah, I just have a
Excuse
really
me.
quick question, I hope. So, are there laws in place that cover HOAs and like what they charge and how much they charge? and-
No. So there are laws about HOAs and planning for future maintenance improvements. And they are required now to forecast all of that and get their fees to line up with their forecasts. There are no parameters from the state that say you can't be a certain percentage or you can't charge more than X, or there is nothing like that. The homeowners themselves decide through their boards how much they should have. But there is some thought to the improvements anyway, and how much they have to charge to make those improvements happen. So we don't end up with a chase.
Yeah.
That's partially, correct me if I'm wrong, part of going back way to the earlier discussion, the reason that we've got a condo moratorium essentially is because these buildings were not properly projecting their maintenance costs, and I mean, it's all tied together, some of it.
My opinion on the condominium
Warranty law.
warranty law was more about predatory litigation at year 9.
Okay.
So they build the condo, year 9, throw a bunch of stuff at the builder to fix. Then insurance companies wouldn't insure the builders anymore, and then it became a huge snafu from the contractor. So that is how that's how that came to be. Yes, associations weren't planning properly prior to, what year did that pass? The HOA law, 95, something like that. Is that right?
The amendments were 2017.
But the original law that you had to get your plans in order was probably late 90s or early 2000s.
And it's still a bit of a mess. I mean,
It is.
there's,
Associations are still trying to catch up.
well, in this building first, or housing first meeting that I had the other day, I mean, we said, the one thing we probably can agree on is if we could get some change to the condo warranty law that would increase the production of housing, we would like that. But the reason it got put in place was, people were abusing the law and using loopholes, and it took away the incentive to build more condos.
Correct.
Did you have a comment further?
So unless they change that warranty law at the state level, they will not get.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, but everybody's tried to change that. 10 years.
Yeah.
Nobody's been able to change it.
So, quick comment on this. I mean, when we did the Chasewood thing, we basically saved 188 units of housing that probably would have gone away in some way, shape, matter, form had we not done that. And, this is a beautiful tool. I mean, ideally, it's just interesting. I mean, I've been around doing this long enough. You see developers develop things, and then they market properties, and they want to sell them, and they want to sell them effectively. So the developers, when the HOA gets formed, they like to have low monthly fees because, I mean, you want people to be able to afford to buy the place, and then if the HOA is $200 a month versus $1,000 a month, it's that much more affordable to that many more people. So they have a real incentive to keep the HOA fees low. But the reality is you need to plan ahead, and you need to build reserves to be able to pay for the things that are inevitably going to happen. And so, then, the developer goes away, and, the HOA is confronted with reality. Well, we don't want to increase the taxes on ourselves, and they get themselves in trouble. I mean, it's really important for a condo association or a homeowners association to build sufficient reserves so that when the roads need to be replaced or the elevator needs to be replaced or the roofing needs to be replaced, they have the money to do it. And when they don't...
And now it's not an option anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
they can't.
Right,
They can't.
but it was that way.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Breckenwood came up. I mean, we all know, we've heard from the Breckenwood
Yes, we
folks,
have.
and now they're taking a different approach. But I mean, this preserved affordable housing that could have gone away.
And didn't I understand that it wasn't all just sort of lack of maintenance over time or attention, that there were some, like the original developer just sort of left some things out of the construction to begin with, which are less likely to happen, hopefully less likely to happen now because they would be inspected differently. So my understanding is that there was missing.
Not at
Maybe
Chasewood.
yes, maybe no. We
Chasewood,
still
That
inspect.
was the inference. That isn't what happened. They had water intrusion, and they didn't maintain, they weren't keeping track of their siding, and water got behind the
Yeah.
siding. I mean, that's That happens. It wasn't because it was built wrong, it was because they didn't maintain it properly.
Can I ask a question? I mean, this has been a great tool for us. How commonly is this used as a tool elsewhere?
I would say any of the suburbs who have era 1970s townhomes and condos are using it.
Is that nationally or is that just here?
Statewide.
Statewide.
I would say the most active user at HIA is St. Louis Park, Minnetonka, Bloomington, Burnsville, Brooklyn Park, and there's one other city.
Richfield has done any.
Yeah, maybe more limited, but Richfield as well. But anybody who has this era of townhomes definitely is using it because they have the same issues that we
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
All right. Anything else, or do we want to go, Julie, you want to take us to the next?
Last subject is rental registry, that was last, and then there's
Yep.
other rental.
Issues, questions?
Short-term rentals.
Okay.
So
All
we'll do
right.
both at once. So what do you guys want to know about rental registry? You know that we're having people register. You want to pull up oh, there you go. Okay, you go, Kendall. Just give a little overview on this slide.
Quick review. We have a rental registry program, and so far of active registrants, we have 531. This is the first year of renewals, so as a renewal comes in, their old registration becomes expired and the new one becomes active. So we keep track of that and make sure once one's been renewed, it's not doubled up. So we're maintaining that on our dashboard. And so that's equaling about, what's that say there, 8,588 units or so. And there was some more attached statistics in the report as well. From some analysis that we have. Looking at kind of the question here of short-term rentals and long-term rentals, based on our registration, we have 16 short-term rentals that are currently active, and then the rest, the 515 remaining, are all long-term. And so that's, short-term rentals are only about 3% of the number that we have. And then so far there's been, in 2025, 184 new registrations, so new people registering their rental properties, and then 266 renewals. And yeah, we're mostly up to compliance with most of our rental building or multifamily buildings, but there's still a few out there that we keep bugging to do it, but we're almost to 100% compliance. Yeah, I might need to have Julie call. But yeah, so we're doing better on that end too.
So,
Thank you. Interesting.
Yeah.
You had some questions, didn't you, Paula?
I have a couple of residents who live next to the short-term rentals. And I know it's not a huge population, but other lakeshore communities, lake communities also don't necessarily have a huge percentage of their residences on lakeshore and also are having issues. So everything from, open gas canisters being stored right by the lake, to noise, to, parking of boats and noise, and, by the time something gets resolved or somebody comes out to resolve something, it's shifted to the next batch of renters. And so the house next to me was just sold and is being built as a short-term rental. We have another one 3 houses down from me that is on the market. So more and more, and there's others that are, in our little community, and the problem is that, it's kind of the small houses, it's kind of tied in, are being sold off and then being purchased by investment groups or people and then being rebuilt as this, and it's caused a lot of trouble and issues in communities around the lake. And I just did a quick bit of research for our lake communities, and out of 10 communities on Minnetonka, 6 of them have now banned or have 30-day minimums short-term rentals because of this.
Mhm.
In fact, Wayzata right now, which did licensing originally a few years ago, is now having listening sessions on they just announced it on Facebook. They had one for owners, now they're having it for residents because of the major issues that they're having. I think they only have like 20 total in Wayzata, and I think that's in preparation for an ordinance change probably there. So that'll be 7 out of 10 communities on the lake. And then Excelsior only allows people to do short-term rentals when it's their primary residence. So you can't have investment groups do that. I think Tonka Bay, they only have like 300 people. They can only do it if they obtain a short-term rental license from the city. And Minnetonka Beach, which is 200 people, requires registering annually and having a designated rental manager, but those are really, really small communities. I just did quickly, Edina and Egan have outright bans. Prior Lake has a 60-day minimum for the short-term rentals. So the issue is that, yeah, I know we don't have a lot of people right now, but just kind of like with our encampment policy, maybe getting out in front of it, I'd rather do that than, having more and more neighbors come to me, because I've had a number of people come to me over the last, few months really worried about, who's going to buy these properties, and, people who are already dealing with, really a lot of disturbance on because of VRBOs that aren't being kept up properly.
Mhm.
They're just kind of, it's gonna kind of ruin the community, or people are worried about that in the end. So, and then it drives up property values even more than it is, and then the whole, for those of us who have been there 30, 40 or more years, then it keeps driving the tax base up when you have these short-term rental and
Mhm.
all of that stuff. So all the attendant problems. So I would love if there's a willingness among council to kind of take a look at this and revisit, because a lot of these things have changed just in the last couple of years as this has become an increasing.
And I'd ask, do you have a recommendation, because you've clearly done the research and you're being I'd say you're being the most heavily influenced. You have a thought on what you'd like to see the city do.
I would like there personally to see some sort of policy. I would, leave it to staff to kind of look around, but I think either a 30-day or the homestead, what Excelsior is doing. I think Wayzata is looking at one of those.
Do you have, based on your research, do you have something that you would recommend?
One of those two, I think.
Okay.
Because like Wayzata only has one that's a homestead, that is doing, and people who, if it's their homestead and they're doing it out of their house, their neighbors are around, so they, do policies. So I could see either doing that or a 30-day minimum.
Okay, great. Thanks for that.
Yeah, if
I'd support that.
Yeah.
I'd support the whole, have it be the
Homeowner.
Yes.
Homeowner, yeah.
Like, that would be the.
But
I like maybe even a hybrid or something, because I think the 30-day, we're doing this huge rehab at our house. We should have moved out. But part of the issue was, where do you move, right? So there is a need. There's people who are dealing with fire and that kind of thing. I think there is a need for a interim length rental, a 30 or 60-day rental situation. I get when it's turning over week after week. But
yeah, that gets old.
Yeah, but that, or like I said, the homestead, when people own the home, like I just stayed in an Airbnb in Columbus, and we had all sorts of things about no partying and all of that stuff. But the problem with lakeshore property, as opposed to kind of a condo in Columbus or Minneapolis or St. Paul or even in Minnetonka, people are usually just based there to go see the city or go to a conference or to a concert, whereas when people are on the water, it gets drunken, loud, sometimes dangerous,
right?
That sort of thing, and
Beach house says party,
yeah.
regardless whether they're beach houses or not.
Yeah. So Anyway.
Any other thoughts? Council, thank you. Yes. Kimberly.
Certainly. Can you remind me of rental, well, so like the inspection policy, like, and how that ties into the rental registry?
So when you have a
Excuse
rental
me.
property, and let's just say there's a complaint about some issue in the house, so it's handled through the property maintenance code, international property maintenance code. The city council adopted that a long time ago, and that's the ability to get into someone's home and inspect it for whatever purpose, whether that be livability, running water, heat, etc. We don't differentiate if it's a short term or it doesn't matter. And in fact, it can be an owned home. It doesn't, and one of the occupants wants to report something. It doesn't matter to us what the situation in the home is. So rental or not, it operates under the same law.
And that's complaint-based, so someone complains and you
Yeah,
go
or
take a
we
look,
see something.
Or you see something.
Yeah,
or like-
that's egregious and a health safety violation we have to take care of, yep.
So like the fire department does,
They do multifamily and commercial inspections. They don't do individual home inspections.
right, and if they see something that doesn't fall under their inspection, they would tell
They
you?
would let us know.
Right,
Uh-huh.
okay.
Yeah, most everything that they're in let's just say an apartment building, most of that is covered under the fire code. There are a few issues they might refer to us. Maybe there's a housing issue, maybe there's mold or something that more falls into our territory. So sometimes that happens.
All right. Are you done?
I am, but I'm not sure on the direction, Mike, on the short term.
Okay, and so council, yeah, I think staff would look for your direction on when do you want to address a short-term rental ordinance? I guess it would be an ordinance. Is this something
It
you
would
want
have to be, yeah.
25? Or something you want to tackle in 26? You have 25. Our next agenda item is looking at our study session work plan. If there's something you want to bring back yet this year, I think that's what staff would need from you is what's the timing? And then I would look to also Julie and Eric for also capacity in terms of things we're working on now and what the capacity is to turn us around yet this year.
And really, is it more of a seasonal summer issue than, or is it year-round?
It is. My only concern is that, there's more and more properties going up for sale. And so what, blowback could there be if people buy it and there isn't one, and then we do one like not till 27 or 26? That I guess.
It's up to you. I mean, I think that's what you're asking, right? When do you want to do it?
Yeah, when do you want to do
Yeah.
it? Basically, when do you want to do it?
Well, I mean, I guess if people can't, if there's a grandfathering issue, that's what I'm not unclear about legally. So if it can be
You
changed
could write it
later.
either way. You could do
Okay.
it either way.
Yeah, I mean, as I look at it, it'd be nice to have it ready for next season.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's, so what's that take? So, but you don't have to do it in October, you could do it in February and still have it ready for next season. So, I mean, it really comes down to bandwidth, but I think, kind of targeting in that context. If it gets done, if we can have it done in the next, whatever it takes, for us to pass an ordinance and then give it 60 days to be effective or 30 days to be effective, whatever, get it, have it in place, by April 1st?
That'd be
Well,
great.
We can target first quarter of 20.
First
Yeah.
quarter, that's what I was gonna
First
say,
quarter of
that
2026.
seems like
Yeah.
what we're
Yeah.
shooting for.
I
And then
think,
I'd wanna
let me
ask about-
talk to the zoning consultant too, because depending on where he's at with his schedule, let's see where that lines up to. Why have to do a separate, you know what I mean? Could do it all at once, is my
We'll
point.
come back with you on some
Options,
timelines, yeah,
some options.
and what that could look like.
Thank
We hear
you.
that, we hear staff what you're saying, council. And then, we can come back with some proposed dates, and then in terms of public engagement, generally we do public engagement, meaning it takes, we want to get
Yeah.
feedback from the
Yeah, you want
council.
owners and.
Draft something, put it out on Minnetonka Matters. I assume we will do
Mhm.
some level of public engagement on it, because that's what we do with ordinances, get feedback on it. That can take some time as well. Usually, this could be a 3 to 4 month process, even if we started it in a couple months.
Yeah.
Right.
no, I understand that. Thank you, Council. for-
Yeah, and then the other thing too is, I mean, you know, with the LMCD, you know, being aware of neighboring communities and consistency, because I mean, you know, I think there's just those interrelations, so that we want it to make sense. We don't want to be an outlier. We want to have a good policy that holds up and also makes sense.
Got
So-
it. Thank you.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. And
That help?
To Paula's question, just to clarify, like for Eric, like if we do something, again, let's say it's the first quarter of next year, if there is a home that's sold, the ordinance could still apply, and there's no grandfathering, is that?
Right.
Okay, great.
Well, you could write it either way, is what I was saying before. You
But
could-
why would we want to grandfather in
I don't
bad
wanna
policy?
I don't want to predetermine what your outcome will
Yeah.
be,
Right.
so
Yeah,
that's what
fair
I
enough.
was saying before.
But we don't have to grandfather.
You don't have to.
Right.
no.
Don't have to grandfather.
No.
Right.
Okay, that's
A,
clear.
a registration or a license is
Registration.
different, so that you're not under a legal obligation to grandfather in like you would with some sort of, you know, zoning entitlement, land use entitlement that runs with the land.
Okay,
Right.
very good, thanks for that. Anything else?
There were 2 more questions that I heard today from Mike, and it was about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and something else.
Sales tax dollars.
Sales tax. So we have,
CBDG.
and CBDG, sorry.
Thank you.
So let's go through the easiest first. LAHA, which is our sales tax, local affordable housing aid. I remembered what it was.
$800,000.
800,000 is what our allocation is. I did put in there, we talked about during the EIP, the uses. So if you caught the little language in there that says you can't replace funding, so like pathways, we can't replace our funding for pathways with that money. So you can't do that. We can't do our down payment assistance program with that because it's not new. So as we talked about as a group, I mean, theoretically, we would go and have, like, hopefully one project will assist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because it's newer dollars, the state has some pretty strict reporting requirements, and we prefer if it was used on 1 or 2 projects.
For ease of capture. So that's that. It'll sit in the fund. It's good for 4 years. It's not like we're under a deadline at this point. Second one was Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I don't know, somebody was asking about where we got that money from originally.
That's me.
That was you, Kimberly? Okay. So originally, we had 4.1 million in TIP pooling money. So our districts pooled, all the existing TIP districts pooled money, pushed it into this special fund, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Most of that was from Boulevard Gardens, if you remember, that had a big balance in there, but all the TIP districts produced pooling, and that helps that balance. The,
And that was done by special legislation
Right.
in
Correct.
2021.
Right.
Which allowed that pooling.
Yeah, we couldn't have done that without the legislation. Then on top of that, we got repaid from a 1985 special loan, something we had done.
Somebody lost track of it.
What was the Cliffs? Was it the Cliffs?
The Cliffs, yeah.
$2.1 million
2.1,
loan that
sorry.
nobody
They
knew
did,
about.
nobody knew it was there, except for we got repaid for it. So, and that's what Good Title Work was doing as Eric. So we had a hold on the property for that loan, and there was a stipulation they pay us back if it was refinanced or sold. That's how we got 2 point, so it was $6-some million in the end. We're actually down quite a bit. We've been spending it, so.
Yeah,
2
on
point-
good projects.
Well, that's good.
2.9 million.
Yeah.
So the special legislation is
Through 26, we can do this.
through 26, okay.
Mhm.
That's what I-
So
Now, that
leftover
doesn't mean you
TIF.
have to spend all the money out of the Affordable Housing Trust, but any transfers in
Yeah.
from those pooled funds have to go in by 26.
Got it.
Yep. CBDG, who wants to do that one?
We have a slide,
We have a,
if it'll work.
we have a toss-up. Who wants to do
It's
that?
kind of like a game show.
So this, before we go on, so So to transfer in, it has to be before 26.
End of 26.
But it's been such a great tool to have. And so what do we do, what do we do about that?
Well, it was
Well,
something that was proposed
shocking.
last year at the legislature, and it
Didn't go
did
anywhere.
not get approved.
Did not get in the tax bill.
Did not make it.
But there's a lot of things that didn't get in the tax
Right,
bill.
right.
And
We gotta
and
extend
we're
it.
gonna go to back, we're gonna go to bat
Yeah.
again, right?
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
already mentioned it to our legislators that, I think they thought it passed, but I think they were getting mixed up with Opus too.
I will also say that when I go to these housing meetings and we talk about this stuff, I beat the drum for affordable housing trust funds hard because it's such a great tool for us. And so I'm hoping that we can see more cities in the state do that and really give a boost to affordable
Yeah,
housing.
we're
'Cause
trying to
it's
promote it as a statewide, I mean, it's really not state money.
Right.
It's local money and it's school money and it's all of that, but my point was if it works for Minnetonka, anybody who has TIF pooling money available to them should be able to use it for housing.
Right.
Yes.
That's our argument.
That's our argument.
Yeah.
Okay, CBDG and then we're done.
I'll do the quick overview. So prior to 2018, the city was an entitlement community within the CDBG program. So HUD directed all of the funding directly to Minnetonka. It was roughly around $100,000 to do rehab loans, and then there was a portion of about $20,000 to $30,000 a year for public services. And the city held its own public hearing to determine which public service agencies received those funds. So it was rehab and then public service dollars. Then between 2018 and 2024, the city joined as a direct allocation city into the Urban County Consortium. So cities elected to direct their CDBG funding to the county. The county distributed the rehab funds, the money was still the same, and then also held a larger public hearing from which cities participated on the committee to determine who scored and received the public service dollars. So the public service agencies were still getting funding. Instead of having to go to every single city and ask for their CDBG dollars, it was all done in one meeting. Now,
And it was still kind of our one pot of money.
yes.
Mhm.
The new 2025 and onward is the Hennepin County Consolidated Pool. And what this does is it is membership of the direct, or the Urban County Consortium cities. Some are choosing to join this year, some are choosing to join next year. All of the dollars will go into a fund, which is roughly $745,000 a year. And they'll still run the various programs, but in addition to the $100,000 or so that the city had for our rehab program, we now have access to a larger pool of funding. And then in addition, all of the program income from the cities that are in this new pool is up for grabs annually. So there's, in addition to the 745, as loans are repaid and coming in, those dollars are then available for special projects. And the city has never had access to those dollars in the past. So the county is committed to keeping our 4 or 5 loans that they were doing a year as a baseline.
Mhm.
And then in
Minimum.
addition, we can apply for special funding for things like maybe our manufactured home or
Right,
things like
right.
that we've never had access to.
Right.
So that's kind of the difference in the
And I think
evolution over the year.
the thing that people don't maybe gather is when those loan repayments happen, so if you don't stay in your home long enough, that loan is not forgiven. So you stay in your home for 5 years, you're having to pay back the fund. Those funds come back here, and when we were our own entitlement city, we'd have to reissue those funds within a very short period of time. Well, to find the new programming for those dollars was really quite a headache, and in fact, the county found out the same thing. They have the same problem in that middle circle. That's why they went to this more expanded circle, so that they would be able to get the money out the door sooner, be compliant with HUD's requirements and so forth. So I mean, that's another a more administrative issue, but that's behind the scenes what's happening as well, so.
Because HUD will penalize counties and cities for not spending the dollars in time.
Right.
Right. And we're not talking like 3 years, we're talking 6 months. You know, it's not a long period of time.
Well, it's
Yeah.
kind of like it's a year, but it takes 6 months to get it all.
That you know that it's there.
Yeah,
and that it's been
then you've got 6
repaid.
months, then there's
Yeah.
6 months left to spend it.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of, it's a,
A lot of work, a lot of work.
and then we don't have any local staff anymore either.
Right.
The HUD staff are no longer there.
Yeah.
So.
I can tell you, when we did it in the first circle, that was always a long meeting.
Yeah.
Having all those people come and
It
basically
was-
ask for money.
Yep, and it was minuscule amounts of money, that's the
Yeah,
thing.
and that was painful.
Yeah, here you have 3,000, you have 2,000.
Yeah, it was really,
Does that make sense, Kimberly, or?
It does make sense, thank you.
Okay.
I was just, when I read through it, I couldn't quite tell the difference between the different iterations, so.
And now,
that's fine.
did you calculate, Kendall, it's 100 and, how many public service dollars? 125?
Yeah, so there was a question about the $125,000 in the report under that CDBG section. And so for clarity, you know, when we were a direct allocation city, so between 2018 and 2024, they're on that committee that the cities were on to choose those public service entities and support those through those CDBG dollars for public service. Last year specifically, $125,000 from that supported Minnetonka residents. So those are organizations that work in and around Minnetonka that support the residents. So residents were getting supported through public service funds from that, and about 125,000 of that was working in and
Direct relationship.
throughout Minnetonka to
Right.
help the residents in
Which
Minnetonka.
it used to be 30.
Yeah.
right. Well, and I would say that, you know, our staff is well-known. We do a lot with housing. I think we get, because of the excellence and the hard work of our staff, we get more than our fair share, because they know that Minnetonka will use the money, and I think we benefit from the reputation of our staff. So we end up getting more money because of that. There are other cities that don't have staffs, they don't have the commitment to affordable housing, they don't have the success. Our success is getting us more money.
Thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, oh, I'm not going to correct that.
She's like, no, we are excellent.
I will take that. Thank you.
All right. Julie, do your
We
team
can
have
go like
anything
this.
else?
No, we're done, I think, unless you
All
had
right.
something else.
All right, I think, Council, any questions that we didn't get to?
Sorry we ran late.
Well, it takes two to tango.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Last comment, when I was at NLC and at the Community Economic Development Committee meeting, I did ask about social housing, and I just, you know, they said they've done quite a bit of research into it. I'm going to follow up with that. I'll share that. Just want to leave one thought, and you know, thinking about how much funding that we spent on, you know, the twin homes, or that we spend as part of the Mills Church. And then I was thinking of that in the context of Doran and the 44 units that I remember them saying it was a $13 million to build that. And so I was thinking 13 million, you know, if for some reason that was city funding to do that, and it was social housing, that would be 13 million to help 44 families or people. Versus, so I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't do these things. I think these are great, especially the manufactured. But I would love to kind of explore that option. I'm happy to, you know, kind of forward that information from National League, and just, you know, bang for the buck at the end of the day. If we, you know, need to really up our affordable housing game, depending on what happens with condo legislation and all of that stuff, that might be another tool in the toolbox that people are really interested in, because again, just for anybody who hasn't heard me beat the drum on this, social housing, which is prevalent in Vienna and parts of Scandinavia, you income qualify in, but you never income disqualify out. And so that tends to be more rental, but rents tend to be around 10% of your income. They float with your income, so that kind of pays operational expenses, and it means more mixed, diverse communities, both, in many ways, including socioeconomically. And people are able maybe not to build generational wealth through selling of houses, but they have a lot more disposable income to create, through investment in other ways. So it's hopefully something that we will, I know multiple communities in the U.S. are looking at that now more and more seriously, and hopefully, that's something we can eventually take a look at as well. So no action there, just kind of comment/information.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, Mike, I'm going to turn it back to you then, because we get to talk about our next meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. Next meeting is August 18th, and so we will be doing general fund budget for the evening. So you'll see Darren and I back in front of you. We got the night off, so thank you, Julie and Housing folks.
Well done, thank you.
So we'll have budgets in August. The other thing that was not on our schedule, but I'd like to, I anticipate the August study session like tonight, hopefully 2 hours with budgets. And then we'll have about 30 minutes of time, no more than that, to bring in our consultant. I say our consultant, something that Miranda, Sarissa, and I have been working on with our employee engagement survey. So about 18 months ago, we did an employee engagement survey. First one we've probably done
Ever.
Had
I'm going
really
with
good
ever.
results.
So that's a while.
I'm going with ever.
Ever. It was important, it's certainly important part of understanding our staff, our culture, et cetera. Had really good results 18 months ago. A couple things that we worked on that came out of that survey. We just did our second one. Got the results of that. Really good results. Thought it'd be just important just to show that to you.
Yep.
We appreciate all the recognition that you give to us as staff on the work that we do, but I think also it's important for at least us to show you what employees think about working here. So we'll have our consultant just give you a high-level overview
Great.
of the employee engagement survey we did, and you'll get a kind of a look under the hood a little bit on our organization a little deeper. So we'll do that in August. And then, September, we've got the zoning rewrite updates. We'll have our junior team back for that, along with the 30-minute open time in September. October, we'll have Opus, and then our infrastructure rate study and asset management study is coming at that time. And then one other item that will either come September, October, and it was scheduled for tonight, which was a conversation on youth programming. And so I can say this because Sarah Wesley has said we could say this. And I think many of you know that our assistant rec director, Sarah Wesley, has been diagnosed with cancer, and so she's been out for about a month now, and so she was really kind of leading this the youth programming conversation. So just with her absence and other things that Kelly's managing with her absence, we pushed this off a little bit. I've also talked with Kizzy because I know this is a topic that is important to Kizzy. And we're going to come back actually a little more comprehensive other than just youth programs. So we're going to look a little more into our ACE programming, the work that we do with Hopkins. We'll look at our depot, and then also look at employment opportunities and how we do our internships here at the city. So it'll be a little more holistic approach about youth in our city, just beyond just the programming. So that will come back either September, October.
Great.
Very good. Any questions, anyone? Well, thanks, everyone. Thank you, community development. You did a great job, and housing is such a huge topic. We're not done talking about it, but it was exciting to see some of the ideas and new opportunities. So thank you all.
Thank you.